Good morning, everybody. How are we doing? I am Scott. Bo is sitting here taking a nap after our second walk this morning. It is about 7:15 in the a.m., Tampa, Florida, the second day of July, 2022. This is July 4th weekend, where we're supposed to be thankful for our real Independence Day. Not those shitty movies, but our real Independence Day. One from a brutal and tyrannical government that attempted to disarm the citizens of its colonies in what would become the United States of America. Partly because they tried to disarm the citizens of its colonies. This is the New York, this is what happened this is on Twitter. Of course, I added a bit to it. Last night, in a lengthy session on a Friday night, so what would be killed by the Friday night fucking the weekend news, people not paying attention and going about their lives. The New York State Assembly passed legislation to limit the ability for people, New Yorkers, to conceal carry firearms in a number of places. We'll talk about those in a second. We'll talk about how obvious these choices are in terms of this being a class-based fucking action. We'll talk about that. But for right now, we'll talk about this. In New York, it's all about talk back, lose your rights. On Friday, New York State legislators voted to pass gun laws that prohibit people from carrying concealed firearms in public settings considered sensitive places such as colleges, hospitals, subways, and parks. The New York Times and CNN report. We'll talk about New York Times and CBS. The new law also lays out strict licensing process to obtain concealed carry permits, requiring applicants get more training and submit social media accounts for review. It's never been about taking all the guns. It's always been about who gets to have them. Censor yourself to keep your rights. Censor yourself to keep your rights. Good morning, folks. I am here. Bo is here. I thought we had a co-pilot. Cricket is having a little drink. And, of course, we have Sir Saucy and old Coach Mauve Pill. This is a fascinating look into how corrupt these governments are. Our government is right now, at least. They also passed a piece of legislation to defend the woman's right to have an abortion in New York. This thing with the concealed carry, they started Thursday evening late. They ran all night with this session. I've got the fucking documents to show you. And they worked their way into late Friday night when they held the vote. They passed the thing, and they ran it across the fucking street, whatever they did, in their capital. And Kathy, old Governor Kathy Hochul, whatever her name is, sounds like someone spitting, she signed it in legislation proudly. All done in the dead of night on a Friday, hoping the news would just peter out and die. And so something else will be talked about on Monday. And I guarantee you something else will be. It'll be gone, poof, down the memory hole. This is the most I mean, unabashedly unconstitutional thing. And I told you a long time ago, all of these fucking mental health laws and all of these things, they're not about keeping guns out of everybody's hands, and not about you have to go through this process, by the way, to purchase bullets. To purchase bullets. And if you already have a concealed carry permit, your permit, I think, is valid until it expires, and then you got to go through this new process, not the old process, this new process, whereas your social media accounts, new, used, and old, will be evaluated. Plus, they're going to have a nice little chat with you. And of course, they give leeway to the local police officers or local law enforcement to make the decisions. And it all goes through, I think, an office that they have to create, regional office in certain regions all around fucking New York. Where if you're on the list, you're on the list. You can do the fucking the gun training, and you can do all this and show you have proficiency and show you fucking no criminal record. You don't beat your wife. You don't fucking use smack. You're a decent, upstanding citizen. You fucking say the wrong shit on goddamn YouTube or social media, you ain't getting no goddamn gun permit. You ain't getting no fucking license to carry concealed carry in New York. And you're damn sure not buying no bullets. And what's the wrong shit, you say? It all depends on who's in office, don't it? This is bizarre. This is what they had in place, and this is what the fucking Supreme Court ruling was about. You can't do this. They made a fucking law for it. State law for it. They said, all right, fuck you, we'll make a state law. And they did. In the dead of night. Now, it's interesting because they're also saying, well, first of all, Kathy Hochul is also saying that, this is great that it happens on the 4th of July, our independence. We're getting independence from going backwards via the Supreme Court. What she fails to acknowledge is we call it Independence Day because in 1776 we decided, I wasn't there, but they decided, some of them, they're not going to put up with living under the fucking tyranny of the crown anymore. They're sick of it. And so they decided to send a Declaration of Independence. And that, of course, meant the king had to send over someone to grab everyone's fucking guns. And then that really inspired more people to jump on board the, you know what, we can do this shit ourselves train. So Kathy brings up July 4th for the ignorant out there. I'm sorry, wait a minute, I got this wrong. I'm sorry. I think I said men. Well, I didn't say men. I forgot we have to do the Disney fucking rehistory. Okay, it wasn't men who fought against the British in 1776 to win our independence. The men were too busy farting and laughing and drinking beer and telling stupid jokes and cowering under the bed. It was the women, and it was fucking little teenage girls, Amazonian little teenage girls, and all the black people from Wakanda. Okay, we got to do the Disney rehistorification thing. So there were no men involved in the fight for our independence. But I mentioned that because what Kathy's doing is just forgetting the fight against the struggle against fucking power is the struggle against forgetting, and that's what they're doing to us. Let me share with you a little bit of this. This is what I first saw. And this is where I got my screenshot from. And I added my stuff to it. That's on Twitter. I want to show you two interesting fucking things here. Briefly. Went to CBS and I read this article all the way down. Sweeping legislation. She's all happy about that. They rushed it over there. She stayed up late on a Friday so she could sign it late Friday so it would be dead by Monday. And there are all kinds of limitations. We'll talk about more of those in a second. So I read this whole thing, and it just repeats itself here. Guess what you don't see anywhere mentioned in this entire fucking article from CBS? That's right, boys and girls. You don't see, there's nothing in here about they want your social media fucking history. There's a number of things they don't mention in here. One of the things is, they say, oh, you can't carry in schools and I think churches and subways. We'll talk about that more in a second. Or any gathering of individuals to collectively express their constitutional rights to protest or assemble. So if you want to have an actual gathering of individuals to talk about supporting your constitutional rights, you have to understand that one of your constitutional rights is restricted there. They don't mention that in this write-up from CBS. They also don't mention that in this write-up from the New York Times. The New York Times. Nowhere in this New York Times article, I've read the whole thing. You can stop the video as I scroll down here and read it yourself. Because goodness knows, they're behind a paywall. Thank you to the individual who helped me out with that. And average people aren't allowed to see this kind of information. However, I will make it public for you. Just stop the video and read it as you go. Now, you can, obviously, just to make sure you understand, I'm not lying to you. It's not mentioned anywhere in there that you have to submit your social media accounts for them to read them and decide whether or not they like the cut of your jib before they allow you the same constitutional rights they allow others. That, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, is the reason this fucking piece of legislation will be challenged in court and lose in court. Unless, of course, they pick a fascist judge. They mention here Kathy Hochul, a Democrat, at a news conference in Albany on Friday, who later that evening signed the bill into law. They may think they can change our lives with the stroke of a pen, but we have pens too. Which I guess to a moron that might be somewhat poetic. She made remarks on the coming July 4th holiday, asking New Yorkers to remember what was being commemorated: the founding of a great country that cherished the rights of individuals and freedoms and liberty for all. For all, unless you're one of those people who has stuff on social media that they don't like. Here's something from the Washington Post talking about when the Redcoats confiscated the guns. Here's something from theindependent.org. The arms of all the people should be taken away. There's not a question. It happened. The king did not like the idea that his colonists were pissed off and armed. So he decided to grab them. And that was the order he gave. And in many ways, they consider this part of probably the last straw. Now, I remember I went to a good school that back in those days, they took the high schools, the public high schools, and they rated them in terms of, best overall education. And we were in the 99th percentile. EC Glass. Still probably is. My guess is. Good education. Public school education. Back when you could have one. Because they weren't designed to fail, so you could fucking privatize them. But back in those days, I remember, this is 1989, by the way. Back in those days, I remember being taught this. In school. Now, no, that never happened. It did happen. Of course it happened. It's happening now. So of course it happened. There are a couple of outlets who actually talk about the fact, do publish the fact, that you're not allowed. They can't even fucking show a picture of a gun together. Oh my God. It's actually together. You can't do that. You got to break it apart before you show a picture of it. What the fuck? Senate okays bill barring guns from Times Square and requiring social media info for the permit. Among other information, potential firearm owners would be asked to divulge all social media accounts maintained over the past 3 years, as well as provide references attesting to their good moral character. I wonder if you're dumb enough to have Donald Trump sign that, whether or not, I'd love to see if that one of those fucking permits gets put through. I'm sure they would. Because after all, Donald Trump is a billionaire. That's from New York Post, and this is from the Washington Examiner. They both mentioned the fact that, they're going to be checking your fucking social media score, social media accounts, to make sure you don't say anything bad. Those seeking gun permits would have to disclose both their active and inactive social media accounts from the past 3 years. You got to be of good moral character. Huckle signs new bill requiring social media history to obtain gun carry permits. This is the most important aspect of this thing. Well, there's another one too. We'll talk about that. This is the most important aspect of this thing, and yet CBS just happens to forget it, as does the paper of record, the Gray Lady, the New York Times. It's not mentioned anywhere in there. You know where else they mention it? The actual bill itself. It's on page 3. For those of you who are following along and who want to go and read this yourselves. Page 6, page 5, page 4, and here's page 3. Certification of completion of the training required in subdivision 19 of this section. That's one of the things you've got to, we'll discuss that in a minute, but that's all the training you got to go through. And you also have to provide a list of former and current social media accounts of the applicant from the past 3 years to confirm the information regarding the applicant's character and conduct as required in subparagraph 2 of this paragraph. Character, we have to confirm the character and conduct of the individual by looking at your social media accounts. Are they looking in those social media accounts for you to say, hey, guess what? I just beat my wife? Are they looking in the social media accounts for you going, hey, look, everybody, I'm doing smack? Are they looking for, in the social media account, you going, hey, I changed my name after being kicked out of the fucking military and being dishonorably discharged? No, they're not. They're looking in your social media accounts, boys and girls, to see if you suck up to the establishment. To see who would be a good brown shirt and who wouldn't. Whatever material they use. Listen, in the state of Florida, if you're a felon, I was a felon. I got caught driving a car in Virginia as a habitual offender. I had 1 DUI, 2 driving on suspendeds. Got the 2 driving on suspendeds one night, same night. And I drove again to drop off my housemate at work when I was going to college in the broad daylight, sober as a judge. And for some idiotic reason, I was driving her because I was going to take her car and go to class afterwards. And so I got busted. And back those days, that was a automatic felony, punishable by 1 year, which I served. That made me a felon. Driving a car, stone cold sober. I didn't use my turn signal. And so I got busted. Got a year for that. Oddly enough, 6 months after I got out of jail, they changed it from a felony to a citation. Not even a misdemeanor. But I'm still a felon. Ergo, I can't own a gun. But that's okay. Can't be a felon. You can't beat your wife and have a history of that, and you can't be a drug addict and have a history of that, and you have to be considered judged mentally deficient, and that requires an actual process where you can defend yourself. If you're batshit crazy, it means probably throwing handfuls of feces at the judge, which that person shouldn't own a firearm, obviously. But that also requires a medical professional, not a psychiatrist, a psychologist, but actually somebody who's a psychiatrist, somebody who's gone to medical school and gone through the whole fucking shit, somebody reasonable, not a psychoanalyst, somebody who knows what they're talking about to say, yes, this individual should not be having a gun. Now, that's a process here in the state of Florida, and that should be the process across the country. And if that were the process across the country, and we'd be much better off, to be honest with you. It's sort of rigorous in that it really does specifically look for reasons as to why somebody should have their constitutional right removed from them, or at least put on pause until they stop slinging fucking their feces at the judge in the courtroom. People who beat their wives should not. They don't fucking fuck them. They don't deserve fucking constitutional rights. Opinion, but that's where the system should be. And what they're doing in fucking New York is clearly a violation of the intent of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. It is a violation of the Bill of Rights itself and the intent of the Bill of Rights. And historically, unless you want to Disneyfy it, historically, it's a spit in the face, I think, of many of those men and women now who, and Wakanda, I guess, residents, who go and fight for freedoms overseas. It's a spit in their face. Because when they get back, they could just as easily have the wrong stuff on their social media. They don't get a pass because they served. They don't say, oh, you served? Okay, you can say whatever you want on social media. Here's your fucking concealed carry permit in the state of New York. No. So it's a spit in their face as well. Now, I told you before we'd talk about another aspect of this. Well, let me do mention this while I'm at it. Now, they pushed this thing through. But of course, remember, they also were talking about decisions. Special session after Supreme Court decisions, and the decision was Roe v. Wade. The other one was Roe v. Wade. You can go and look at the CBS thing and the New York Times thing. Court rulings, abortion, and guns. So you know what I'm talking about. It's not lies. Rather than working all night on Thursday through Friday morning and Friday day, and then Friday night having a bill ready to go that said women have a right to decide what happens to their own fucking bodies, period. End of story. And sign it. I'm proud to have signed this, says Catherine. Instead of doing that for this issue. The other issue, the gun grabbing, and you can't have a gun here, that issue, that they did signed, boom, it's a law. The abortion thing, it's a little different for some reason. They started the process, according to them, which will mean that they have time to put forward some kind of legislation, and it's going to take about a year, and then after a year, it's going to come to a referendum vote for the people at some point in late 2023. But until then, fuck you women, you ain't got no fucking right to an abortion. Well, again, it's a state thing, so obviously New York, but that's a state thing. Meaning, states have the right to pass legislation to make sure that they are going to be able to, women have that right. You would think that that would be the first thing on their minds. No. You would think, in order to make sure that that didn't get lost in the shuffle over the next, 15 months, that would be a priority for them. No, you'd be wrong. Now, let's get back to the bill itself. There's a long list of places where you cannot even, there is no concealed carry allowed. Whether or not you have the permit, you're still not allowed. I showed you one, which was way down there, and that was the page 9, was it? Page 9, I think. Let me look real quick. I'm sorry, I should have. Here we go. Talking about these sensitive locations. You can't carry any of this in a sensitive location. And for the definition of sensitive locations, which, by the way, the Supreme Court allowed them to do this. You could call all of fucking New York State a sensitive location, according to the Supreme Court. They don't give a shit. So, but look at what they added here. Any place of worship or religious observation. Location providing health, behavioral health, or chemical dependence care or services. Any place owned under the control of federal, state, or local government. Any place owned or under the control like a city street, like a sidewalk, for the purpose of government administration, including courts, libraries, public playgrounds, public parks, and zoos. Location of any program licensed, regulated, certified, funded, or approved by the Office of Children and Family Services. Nursery schools, preschools, summer camps. Anything by the Office of People with Disabilities or the Office of Addiction Services. Any place under the offices operated by the Offices of Mental Health. Homeless shelters, runaway homeless youth centers, shelters, family shelters, shelters for adults, domestic violence shelters, emergency shelters, residential programs for victims of domestic violence. Residential settings licensed, certified, regulated, or funded by the Department of Health. Educational institutions, colleges, universities, private career schools, school districts, public schools, school districts, everything's in a school district. Private school licensed under Article 101 of educational law, charter schools, non-public schools. Schools. Any place, conveyance, or vehicle used for public transportation or public transit, subway cars, train cars, buses, ferries, railway, omnibus, marine or aviation transportation, or any facility used for any conjunction in connection with services like I forget the name of the place. It's been so long since I lived there. Train stations, subway, rail stations, subway, and bus terminals. This is a big one. Why is that a big one? Well, think about it. Who uses public transport? Especially in places like New York City. Who doesn't use public transport? It's a better question. In places like New York City. That's right, boys and girls. It's a class-based argument. Of course, it's all going to come down to the licensing and what your social media says and the kinds of folks you have, giving you a thumbs up in terms of your references. Are they working folks, working stiffs, or are they wealthy people, doctors, lawyers, psychiatrists, politicians? It's a class-based system. And of course, you can't go anywhere unless you drive in Manhattan. I don't know if you've lived in Manhattan, lived there for 7 years. I know one thing. Public transit is also considered, cabs are considered public transit. So technically, you can have a license to if you get one to conceal carry, but you can't go anywhere with it unless you walk. And there are some places, like sidewalks, in front of any number of those things I just read to you, where you can get busted for carrying in that particular area. So there's a class aspect to this whole thing, obviously. If you're not a celebrity, if you can't prove your need, that's what the law said before. You got to prove a need to do it. I'm a working class guy. I got a wife and I got 2 kids, and I'm worried about them. As the numbers increase in terms of gun violence and violent attacks in the city of New York. Not enough. Are you wealthy? Are you a celebrity? Are you a politician? Do you work for any of those people? No? Well, then guess what? You don't have a need for self-defense and to defend your family. That's what there was in the fucking law. That's the way the law was set up. And now, this new piece of legislation isn't that far from that. In fact, it's actually worse with you have to submit all of your social media fucking stuff to get Bo, stop that, in order to get a fucking permit. It is absolutely class-based. Absolutely class-based. And Republicans made good arguments last night about this as they were fighting to stop this bill from being passed. And basically, it was, aside from the obvious constitutional issues with it, crime is up. Violent crime is up in New York, all across the state, but especially in New York City. At a time when people need to be able to defend themselves, what you're doing is you're saying, you know what, it's a free-for-all. All you criminals out there, just know your average, if you want to fight, if you want someone to go after, don't go after the fucking wealthy people, just go after the fucking average Joe, and he's a sitting duck for you. That's remarkable. It's remarkable that's what's happening up there. And that, I don't think that it's going to survive a real challenge. And I'm sure when it finally makes its way all the way back to the Supreme Court, it certainly won't survive that because they've already ruled against very similar fucking language in New York. But that is the concern. That is the concern. Once we start accepting that, yes, your social media is going to play into whether or not you have the right that was given to you in the Constitution of the United States of America and the Bill of Rights, and that it can be these rights can be taken away from you if you say the wrong thing, well, that's just one right. How about the rest of them? Now we're getting into a very different interpretation of democracy. It's a very different interpretation. I think it was Che who said a long time ago that there's going to be another great war fought in Europe between the Russians and the fascists. Only this time, he said, fascism will be called democracy. I believe it was Che. Could have been Fidel. One of those guys. Anyway, that is my Saturday offering to you. It is a sobering moment when people are so fucking stupid. They think that it is doing honor to the idea of celebrating July 4th by passing legislation to snatch up guns from the wrong people in the state of New York. If they can get you to believe that, they can get you to believe just about anything. And I thank you, and Sir Saucy thanks you, and Bo thanks you, and of course Cricket thanks you, and so does old Coach Mauve Pill. Have a good Saturday. Free BB!